Republicans in the Ohio House have introduced legislation that puts strict rules against teaching about sexual orientation and gender identity in schools. The bill is similar to a controversial Florida law, which opponents have dubbed the Don't Say Gay bill. LGBTQ advocates, teachers' unions, and business groups are rallying against the legislation, which they call harmful to students and educators. Statehouse correspondent Andy Chow reports.
Lawmakers are proposing legislation in Ohio that would ban schools from teaching about sexual orientation or gender identity to students kindergarten through third grade. House Bill 616 is similar to a Florida measure, which came to be known by detractors as the Don't Say Gay bill. Legislation like this has been cropping up in other Republican-run states. For students fourth grade and up, the bill would ban education on sexual orientation or gender identity in, quote, a manner that is not age-appropriate or developmentally appropriate for students in accordance with state standards. LGBTQ advocates sounded off against the bill just hours after it was introduced. Catherine Poe, public policy and communications organizer for Equality Ohio, noted that LGBTQ children are already vulnerable to bullying and mental health issues.
When we segment children off and tell them that they don't exist and that they don't matter and effectively erase them from the classroom and say that they can't share their experiences and their home lives in school, we effectively erase them. We alienate an entire group of young people who need our affirmation and support.
A national survey on mental health conducted by the Trevor Project in 2021 found that 42% of LGBTQ people ages 13 through 24 seriously considered attempting suicide in the past year, including more than half of transgender and non-binary youth. Denzel Porteous, executive director and CEO of Stonewall Columbus, says it's important for LGBTQ children to see representation.
We know that when we see reflections of ourselves in education, in popular culture, that we find a deeper understanding of who we are and what we're about. And so this bill, if it does pass, which we hopefully hope it doesn't, would quite frankly diminish representation within the classroom, diminish representation in terms of conversation around identity.
Under the bill, parents could file a complaint against a teacher or school with the State Board of Education. Teachers would face the threat of losing their license if they were to break this proposed law, and schools could lose funding. Along with echoing the concerns for LGBTQ youth, Scott DeMauro, president of the Ohio Education Association, the state's largest teachers union, said the bill would make teachers consumed with fear.
Constantly looking over one's shoulder, people having to fear losing their jobs, losing their license because someone misinterprets something that they're saying, I think is bad.
Also pushing back on the bill is the Ohio Chamber of Commerce, the state's largest business group and supporter of LGBTQ anti-discrimination legislation. President and CEO Steve Stivers, a Republican former congressman, said in a statement, quote, Ohio is blessed with a number of recent large-scale private investments, but the state remains challenged from a workforce standpoint to fill the scores of available and upcoming job openings. To this end, Ohio needs to be a welcoming place for all. We should focus on ways to cultivate and harness the talents of Ohioans while also attracting out-of-state workers to relocate here. The chamber is concerned that some of the language in this bill may impede Ohio's ability to lure the best and brightest minds to fill these openings and put down roots in the Buckeye State. However, we trust that through the legislative process, everyone will get a chance to have their voice heard. The bill, put forward in a year when the entire House and half the Senate is on the ballot, has no co-sponsors. The sponsors of the bill, Republican Representative Gene Schmidt and Republican Representative Mike Loychik, did not respond to requests for comment. Schmidt was asked to talk about the bill after leaving a committee hearing. Representative, would you have time to talk about HB 616?
I got a bill over in the Senate. I have to go.
Okay, great. Can you talk after that? No?
No, I'm busy.
Okay, you don't want to talk at all about the bill? The lawmakers later put out a written statement in which Loychik wrote, quote, children deserve a quality education that is fair, unbiased, and age-appropriate. On Tuesday, House Speaker Bob Cupp said he had not yet read the bill and added that the topic has not been discussed among House Republican caucus members. Cupp says the next step would be to assign the bill to a House committee, then find out if there's any further interest among his members. Governor Mike DeWine also said he had not read the bill, adding that Ohio wants to be an inclusive and welcoming state. DeWine also said he wants a committee process to, quote, hear the pros and cons. Andy Chow, Statehouse News Bureau.
That bill joins two others at the State House that deal with so-called divisive concepts and how they're talked about by government entities. One, House Bill 322, sponsored by Republican Representative Don Jones, is centered on K-12 schools. Another, House Bill 327, would ban discussion of concepts surrounding racism in public policy in schools, colleges and universities, state agencies, and local governments. It's had one hearing last June.